Good morning, everybody. We are extremely pleased to have this crowd visiting our 7th Natural Resources Day. 7 years ago, Urs had this brilliant idea that we have to bang on the table and tell investors how difficult it is to bring resources out of the ground. So we are really happy. 7 years ago, we were having 30 people in the room. Now today we had actually 125 on the list. Now the immediate reaction of an investor would be, is that already it? But if I look in the audience, the average age is slightly younger than me. Which means that you have to have seen some cycles. Otherwise you do not understand it. And I think until the new kids are joining this presentation, and we probably would need a much larger room, we still believe we are in early innings. Now, you have the fact sheets on your chair. That is marketing for one reason. Secondly, you have the QR code on the second page on the two fonts, and you can scan this QR code and then you can follow the presentation. Sorry, I tried to wake you up. And then you can follow the presentation also at the very end, because then you can look at it and jump ahead if you are bored on your mobile phone already. We have an external speaker today with us. I'm extremely pleased and happy that he was able to come this year, because we planned to bring him already last year to show the complexity of mining. And he's talking about Swiss mining, because we are trying to build a second Gotthard tunnel. And he's the head of the project from the north side. So last year, 1 week before the event, he had to call me up and said, "Hey, Alex, I cannot make it, because the roof came down in the first tunnel because we are putting some explosive too close to the other one." Quod erat demonstrandum, exactly what we wanted to prove, how difficult it is to actually bring things alive. If you follow him after a break, it's a total different world. We have absolutely no idea, if we are sitting in our offices, how difficult it is just to build a tunnel of 17 kilometers length. This team you know, most of you, because it's the same team for a very long period of time. I had to change this figure here because it's not anymore 25 years, it's 30 years. Marcos, our CIO, who is the final decision taker when it comes to portfolio. Urs, you know well, as the guy that invented this event. And last but not least, our founder, Carlos Jarillo. That's the agenda. We'll talk about the future of energy, a consolidation, inventory cycle ending, and then real-life mining, as already mentioned. And then finally, the last part, basically before the standing lunch, will be Marcos trying to explain how we try to understand commodities. You're not in the wrong presentation, but this is a theme that everybody talks about. And I use ChatGPT to get this definition because I'm lazy, but I thought it's once in a while maybe worth to really show what AI really means. Everybody talks about AI, everybody wants to invest in AI, etc., etc. Don't get me wrong. We strongly believe that AI will be a revolution at least as much as the internet was a revolution. But you know what? 30 years ago, my first internet provider was CompuServe. And most of you in this room knows this sound, and then finally you got in. 150 companies were present in '95 in this business to be an internet provider. None of them was ever profitable. McKinsey has done a fantastic study showing the growth rate of this, the change it will have to the industry, etc., etc., etc. None of them was profitable. So we are arguing, be careful. Who is really making money on that? I used this slide already in spring. because I think it's worth to tell the same story maybe twice or three times. Now it has become a bit more rational in the market, and people start to question, is it really profitable or not? And how profitable it is. The next slide is showing something. 4 years ago, the pig at that time that was pushed through the city, because we are close to the pig market, because the Paradeplatz used to be the pig market, was actually autonomous driving. Who would ever have thought 4 years ago that the big guys making money and taking advantage of autonomous driving are actually the mining companies and the big farmers? So it's not where you expect that you can actually then implement things like that. And the so-called old economy, I think, can have huge advantages also on AI. Now, I would like to ask you to even more wake you up a question. Do you know somebody, without jumping a screen ahead, what's the weighting of the US in MSCI World? Any guess? Yeah. Okay, that was very precise. Because that's the revolution or evolution since almost 40 years from the US. And it stopped at December 2020. So I asked myself, I want to have an update here. So I went to one of these ETFs and then I saw 22%, 72%. And what's very interesting is that the GDP part of the US is 25%. Now, of course, we know that US is very important and they sell to the world, etc., 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 etc. Yes, but 3 times as much. Germany has a weighting of, I think, 0.8, but has 4% GDP part of the world. Maybe it's time to think a bit. This chart you have seen, usually black and white. This time I thought, okay, I'm going to change something. But it's the same story. Since 50 years, we are still here at the lows. And nothing has moved. Of course, it's a ratio between the commodity prices and the S&P 500, which means it will close from both sides. Here we are looking at equities, so MSCI mining relative to MSCI World. And I like these ratios a lot because they are slow-moving masses and they tend to mean revert. So we strongly believe, and it's amazing, we're almost back to the trough in 15-16 when Urs started with us again, and Ivan Glasenberg bought back 16% of Glencore that he IPO'd in 2011 on the top. We think it's maybe not so bad to think what other, or to look at what other smart investors are doing. Energy is similar. We had the turn. It went even further down, but then it turned, and now it's going down again. Let's see how long, but we are pretty optimistic that the oil market will be a very interesting one pretty soon. If you're looking at valuations, this chart you're going to see again with Marcos. We're trading maybe on today's numbers, because that was done mid-year, even below a 10 times earnings. We probably have 1.5 price to book and almost close to 4% dividend yield. The last 4 years, the fund performance, we were able to outperform S&P Natural Resources Index by almost 100%. This was, of course, in a good phase of the market. And we were able to outperform another 60% purely commodity indices like the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index. Last but not least, and that's my last slide, we are pretty happy that Bloomberg puts us in the area of all the natural resources fund in the top decile over 5, 3, and 1 year. And slowly and steadily we are getting more and more interest. That was my part, and it's now time to give the mic to Carlos. Thank you.